good morning to you. My name is Gary Burgess. I am fully clothed from head to toe, as you would expect at a Digital Jersey annual review. But I imagine wherever you're watching right now, you've either not bothered or it's still pajamas from the waist down. But welcome to our virtual look back on the past 12 months. Lots to go through over the next hour. Let's just take a look at what's in store. Over the course of the next 10 minutes, we'll look at how 2020 was intended to start. And then we'll move on to the small matter of something you might have heard of called a global pandemic. And we will see how Jersey, the digital industries and Digital Jersey pivoted at breakneck speed to respond to that. We'll also then, as we kind of got used to this normality, look at how the industries responded and grew and actually thrived in that moment before looking ahead to 2021 and the next 5 years as well. We'll be giving you details of the Digital Jersey 5-year plan that will be opening up to consultation so that you can get involved as well. Lots of guests will be joining me during the course of the morning, not least somebody you might recognise. You've probably seen him once or twice. Tony Moretta, CEO of Digital Jersey. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Gary.
How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
A question to which there are many answers. If we're all being utterly honest, we cannot broadcast at this time of the morning. I can think of a few choice words myself. In the Corona coaster of 2020, how would you characterise it for both you and Digital Jersey?
Well, you beat me to it, because I was going to say, ironically, in a year when neither of us could get to one of our favourite places in the world, Orlando, it's been a roller coaster. And like a lot of roller coasters, it's thrilling. You feel a bit sick in your stomach sometimes, and you may be glad it's over at the end, but you want to get back on.
You want to get back on? Let's take a look back at that ride.
Welcome to the Digital Jersey 2020 annual review.
And so your ability to have a great idea here and get it adopted globally is better now than it's ever been.
This is a great place to be an entrepreneur.
I think every business has to be digital to an extent.
You never know what tomorrow's going to bring, and it's a fast-paced, ever-changing industry.
AI will help us manage our world better.
So the Digital Leadership Programme is a 2-year programme, and it essentially teaches you everything about social media and all the aspects of digital marketing, but also a broader range of topics like technology, coding, design and so on.
There's just amazing opportunities out there. It's been proven over again that if you have a more diverse workforce, it benefits everybody.
Digital Jersey has been fantastic in getting us through the hoops to allow us to talk to the right people in the right place at the right time.
This will be the world's first jurisdiction-wide air quality monitoring network.
What incredible memories of a 12 months gone by. And it strikes me that this time last year, we were in something called a cinema. Do you remember these things where we used to get together and watch things on the big screen? Although there was always one performance from a galaxy far, far away that people used to enjoy at the Digital Jersey annual review, and that is Tony Moretta leading the way. You kind of kept having a Star Wars theme at these events. I know we're not going to go there today.
No, I did get a few comments on Twitter last night. Surely Tony's going to have a Star Wars reference. And I thought, we're not in the cinema, there isn't a Star Wars movie out, and we've only got an hour. So apologies for anyone who was hoping for that today. But you can make your own up, I'm sure.
Which includes you sitting opposite Jabba the Hutt. Let's leave that one and move on from Star Wars. But actually, 2020 has been otherworldly. But there was a point this time last year. It's a curious thought. Although we were aware of something was going on in China, it wasn't really on anyone's day-to-day radar. We weren't talking about coronavirus whatsoever in day-to-day life. How did 2020 start, and what was the plan for last year, Tony?
Well, I can't believe, like a lot of people, what we were doing a year ago. I can't believe I was complaining about too many events and too much travel and what I wouldn't give for the same to begin this year. But we always said going into last year that we'd start to look at our international connections, whether that's getting our message off-island, whether that's meeting more organisations, connecting up with academic institutions and others. And we got off to a great start. At the very beginning of the year, I was really lucky to spend a week in Silicon Valley. That was not only about meeting some really interesting companies, really interesting people, but I got to sort of walk around Stanford. And I remember years ago when I came here to Jersey, people said, well, actually, why can't Jersey be the next Silicon Valley? And somebody else said, I think it was our new FinTech ambassador, Dave Birch, in his inimitable style. I don't remember seeing a Stanford from the taxi window driving here from the airport. But that was an interesting thing that I started the year in, of realizing that actually, virtually everybody I met to do with new technologies, to do with new companies, they'd had some involvement with that amazing university. And only a few weeks later, I was lucky enough to be with our great external relations team, with the chief minister over in New Jersey at the end of January, just before our annual review last year. And we signed an agreement with the New Jersey Big Data Alliance, and that is a group of East Coast universities, including Princeton. And that was a fantastic experience where they were apparently envious of the Digital Jersey website, which was great for the Chief Minister to hear. But we've had connections with them since that we carried on. They spoke in Tech Week, you'll remember. We've spoken at some of their events. Once we can do it, we'll have some student exchanges between the academy and some of those universities as well. So really interesting off-island connections and understanding. And then, of course, at the annual review last year, and I hate to admit it really, but I found the onset of COVID quite selfishly frustrating that there were so many things we wanted to get going. If you remember, we saw up on screen Professor Dame Wendy Hall from Southampton University, who wrote the UK AI strategy. She came and talked to us, and she's now joined our board. We had the head of the United Nations Smart Cities Programme. We had somebody over from Norway who developed our digital twin. And so we got off to a really good start with those connections. And the good thing is we've kept those going even in a virtual world, as we saw in Tech Week.
And I think they're really important points to make, because we sometimes hear that, you know, Tony's been on his travels, he's been across the Atlantic, we've signed an MOU here or there, Dame Wendy's been on stage at an annual review, but then what? Your point is, we're already seeing the benefits of those relationships now, that COVID has not been a barrier to that. But actually, the opportunity, I suspect, has only just begun.
It really has. And the other thing that was about almost, I think, exactly a year ago is I was really honoured to be asked by my old university, Exeter, to give their annual lecture, which of all places was in Truro Cathedral. So going from Stanford and Silicon Valley and New Jersey, and then standing up in Truro Cathedral. And they asked me to give a talk on disruptive innovation. Little did we know at the beginning of February last year. But actually what was really useful for me is meeting afterwards with the Vice-Chancellor of Exeter University, one of the leading Vice-Chancellors in the UK at the time, and also the Chief Exec of Cornwall County Council. And a lot of people don't necessarily know this. The University of Exeter has 3 specialised campuses in Cornwall: medical school, marine sciences, mining. And I started off a discussion with him, which we'd hope to carry on about, what would it be like? Would it be a mad idea to have a Jersey campus of the University of Exeter? And he said no. This is one of the leading vice-chancellors in the UK. He said no, we do want to specialise, you want to do research and development, you could look at finance, fintech, marine sciences, sustainability. And I think that really opened my eyes to the opportunity of that's where we are perhaps missing out as a small island. We lose our bright young people every year. How do we attract bright young people to replace them?
I know during the course of the morning we are going to work chronologically through, but I'm going to jump a little bit ahead on that point because it's a really interesting point. We talk a lot about the concept of a university or a significant campus linked to a university. Do you think there's an appetite for that to happen? And curiously, I wonder, given how COVID has helped fast track things, and we'll come on to some examples in a few minutes' time, do you think we can just get on and make this happen somehow?
I think we can. I think we have to have that ambition. I think we've seen with what the Economic Council came out with about Jersey having some ambition around skills, around innovation, around entrepreneurs, around things like sustainability. I think there's a lot of appetite out there in the community. There's a few big projects we perhaps have to get out of the way first over the next couple of years. But yeah, I think there is that ambition. And I think that's something that Jersey has to rediscover. Everyone talks about the new normal. As we saw in Tech Week, really all that COVID has done is accelerate trends that were going on already. And I think this is one of them. You will build a prosperous future economy on the back of talent and skills. And that's really something we have to focus on in the years ahead.
We've spoken a lot over the past year of the R word, of resilience, that in the face of a crisis like none of us could imagine in our lifetimes, human beings are just resilient, adaptable creatures. I just wonder, another aspect of that, though, is, are we lacking a bit of confidence in Jersey? Just to think, do you know what? We can flipping well do this. I use the university campus example just because you mentioned it, but we have the resilience. Do we have the confidence, or do we need to remind ourselves a little bit more that actually, do you know what? We can do this.
I think we're lucky that we can take a lot of things for granted. As we'll see later on, we were able to take for granted that we had a broadband network that would cope with everyone working from home and being taught at home and being entertained at home. So we take a lot of things for granted. But I think we need to get a bit beneath the economy, get a bit beneath our plans and say, looking at the future and say, how do we make sure that we have an improved quality of life for islanders? How do we make sure we have a prosperous economy? How do we make sure people have opportunities to improve their skills, improve their lifestyle? And all of these things combined together, you know, digital and technology have a role to support all of those ambitions.
Tony, hold that thought. He just mentioned those three words, working from home, WFH, which is very similar to another acronym, but we won't go there right now. Let's just remind ourselves of what happened when COVID hit.
People have been able to work from home relatively seamlessly. Schools have been able to keep in touch with students in terms of keeping teaching going. People have been able to communicate with loved ones, and they've been able to be entertained. And that's really down to the fact that we have an amazing infrastructure with our 100% fibre network built by JT, operated by some amazing telecoms companies who've really supported the whole island adopt to remote working and remote living.
Using Teams, we were able to professionally and securely keep all the island's politicians connected and broadcasting live to the public.
And what it's done is really demonstrate the facilities and infrastructure we've got at the Digital Jersey Academy.
There are lots of ways that technology can be used to automate some of the processes we have right now to address the challenges we have of coping with COVID-19.
What memories of a year gone by. I'm sure every single person watching this and everyone else we know will have a story to tell for a lifetime of this year. But one of the words I want to come to is the word pivot, which has become a polite word for getting your plans and throwing them in the bin. But it's politely called pivoting, apparently, in the world of commerce. So, Tony, I'm not saying you threw your plans in the bin, but all this happened in March. Digital Jersey, just like Jersey and the digital of Jersey, had to pivot. How did you actually go about doing that?
So I think we all remember what happened when lockdown occurred. And I remember quite vividly coming back from the sort of first, my last meeting in London, I think even still in early March, with Jersey Finance and with government. And even London was quite quiet an area at the time. So coming back, the work from home, not having the team there, I think like every other company, we sort of got arrangements in place for people to work from home. Luckily enough, we were already set for that with laptops and everything else. But really, we started to think, what are the things we can carry on doing, but what are the things we can't do? And also, how do we, as you say, pivot and think, okay, how can we focus our efforts, maybe not on overseas business development, attracting people here, whatever, maybe a bit more of a focus on digital society than maybe we do, because we don't always focus on that at Digital Jersey. And there's been a lot of discussion recently about the digital divide, and I must admit that's something that was brought into stark focus as well. So really we started to think about, before we got into the testing and tracing and the work like that around the app, we started to think, how can we help industry, how can we help society? So we started to think about how we get Rory online doing his videos, not just his walks through the park, but also how he helps teachers teach online, how we help businesses use Teams. Teams was always just an icon, including myself. There was an icon on screen that my team were nagging me to use, but we didn't know how to use it. So we got some tutorials out there. We worked with the telcos, who were fantastically supportive and still are, to give everyone a speed increase, to give everyone a capacity increase on their fixed and mobile broadband, so people didn't have to worry about what they were going to do when home. We arranged free broadband for kids who maybe didn't have it, who were sent home. So it was things like that that we stepped in and said, how can we help society use these amazing technology foundations we've got? We also looked how we could help industry. So you remember very well, because you hosted it, the COVID challenge.
Absolutely.
We thought there were going to be people out there with ideas. You know, we've got a bit of money, which we're now not spending on other things. We got great support from government. It said, yep, go for it. And we saw some things like the Care Academy, Fetch. You know, we were able to help the digital industry that was helping maybe the analog industries in Jersey go online. So we'd all have takeaways. And we'd all still be able to shop, because we have to carry on shopping, don't we? We could still shop at home. And wasn't it amazing that businesses that probably thought they'd never have to do online ordering did, and that there were some great people locally to help them do it?
It struck me that it effectively fast-tracked what needed to inevitably happen for certain retailers, for example, to survive and thrive into the future. But it also, I thought, digital and Digital Jersey can be kind of quite a conceptual thing. It's quite hard to show someone what it is. You know, you can't see a fibre network, but suddenly it affected literally every person's lives. And you mentioned the telcos there, effectively taking their foot off the hosepipe just to allow as much data to go through for working from home, for education, yes, for the odd Netflix box set as well, absolutely vital. And it was just a reminder of that investment that's been going on for years, finally paying dividends.
Yeah, and one of my favourite personal experiences in the early days, partly because I was getting a bit lonely here and the team went here, is when I was able to go down to the Digital Jersey Academy, and who was sitting there but the bailiff and the greffier and the team, because one of the things that you've got to keep going is government. You've got to allow the politicians to meet up. You remember that the politicians initially met up in Fort Regent. That seems like a long time ago, until Ivan told them off. And we realised we had to do it virtually. And so we were actually the first full parliament in the Commonwealth to be able to meet virtually. And that was amazing, because again, that showed that even probably one of our most traditional establishments was able to use technology and just keep going.
And I think people don't realise that. We sort of accept it now. And I tune in online to be amused to find out how many times they're going to go, Senator, you're on mute, or a camera pointed up someone's nostrils like Kenneth Williams. That's the upside of it for me. Obviously, passing laws is very important as well. We had that side of it. But there was also a moment where you were then effectively parachuted into government to really deal with some technology that was urgently needed to keep the infrastructure and the life of this island running.
Actually, this is one of the things that Jersey is really good at, and we don't always appreciate it. If you look at the mess that has been made in the UK of test and trace and things like that, you had a real Jersey PLC, Team Jersey, whatever you want to call it, approach. You know, you saw it with Ports of Jersey helping with the Nightingale Hospital and things like that. Because we already had a very good relationship with strategy and policy within government, I'd already put a few of my team in to help get things like the public health questionnaire. We had amazing examples that we saw in Tech Week of local tech companies being able to respond straight away to build an integrated public health record and system. So we'd already been helping with things like that with the team. And then, yes, one Saturday lunchtime, Charlie did actually phone me up and said, can you come in and help? And of course, I was glad to. And it wasn't just me. There were lots of people from around Jersey who were coming in, from government entities, arm's length organisations. And we were able to see a team of all the talent. You know, one of the real pleasures for me was working with, I didn't really know him at the time, Mark James, the retired Chief Fire Officer, who was a fantastic partner in crime in getting the test centre up. You know, and again, that was a real amazing. It was interesting for me to work with the civil service, to work with technology providers as well, and get in place something which I think we should be really quite proud of. There's a lot of debate about border policy and things like that, but actually the sight of people getting off a plane, coming through the doorway, they'd filled in their details online beforehand, they could come through, people in PPE, swab them, they get the result texted to them, they get wellness messages texted to them, it went into a database. The contact tracing team were able to do an amazing job, again, based on technology. And I think in many ways, not only did society realise the advantages of some amazing digital foundations, but maybe government did as well last year.
And an example of where, I mean, this was because no one had any choice in the matter, but that's sometimes easier. Take away the choice, we just get things done. But it is an example, and I hope people will dine out on this example to make the point, where government can work with its arm's length organisations to use their expertise and indeed their sort of stewardship. And with private industry, you can't just get things done, you can get things done really quickly.
Absolutely. That shows when we have to do things quickly, we can. When there is a burning platform, we're able to bring people together, even on technology standards, and government can still achieve things that are harder for the private sector to do. You know, people weren't worried about the money, people weren't worried about the resources, people were working every hour. We had local technology companies, government were able to go direct to Microsoft to help us build our new arrival system and things like that. Everyone worked together really quickly. We were nimble and agile. And we always say Jersey can be nimble and agile, and that's the technology world as well. But in reality, we're not as much as we can be. But maybe 2020, there were some really bad bits, but if there was a silver lining, it's that we can do things that are world class, that we can show off about. We can work together really well across the public and private sector, and we can do things quickly when we want to.
Well, let's pick up on the quickly word and that silver lining word as well, because we're looking back in 2020 effectively in three parts. Pre-pandemic, the eye of the storm effectively, but then by the back end of 2020, whilst life was far from back to normal, we were learning to live with all of this.
So we're really pleased to announce this week the launch of the Jersey COVID Alert app. That's been developed by government and Digital Jersey and the health team, working together with the developer of the app that has been successfully deployed within the Republic of Ireland, within Scotland, Northern Ireland, and even New York and New Jersey as well.
When the virus came along and we stopped having sort of physical events, people started to create virtual events which were a sort of simulation of the physical.
Now, we've shown a different way of doing things, and one thing I hope is that people can actually see what we're doing and think, why don't I do that?
I don't want you to think this is just an experiment. This is the way things are going to be done from now on, and Jersey is taking an amazing lead.
Hi, I'm Becky, a digital marketing specialist, content creator and entrepreneur, and I recently relocated here to Jersey. By far, the best thing I ever did was move to Jersey, and this could be your life too.
So, a good reminder of what can continue in even the worst of times. Let's talk more with Tony about this, with where that film started, and that is perhaps something, again, we now take for granted. In fact, I've got it on my mobile phone here. I always think of it as like the front of the Knight Rider car going woo, woo, with its radar. My COVID Alert app is there, ready to keep me safe. That app did not happen by accident. That app was not just going Googling, where do I buy an app? You were very much involved in that process.
Yeah, and that's a good example of, again, that partnership between government, in this case, not only the IT people, but also the health people, an organisation like Digital Jersey, and on and off island technology companies. We looked at the app from the very beginning. You remember when COVID hit, everyone was saying, mobile phones will save us. Yeah. But what was interesting is when we looked at that at Digital Jersey, we said, actually, that's a technology that's not quite there yet. Let's wait and see. We were lucky that we didn't quite need it then. Little did we know that we'd need it more going into winter. But we were able to look around the world and say, actually, in that case, what the UK was doing was not the best solution. We went with the Irish solution because we thought it was simple. You know, technology doesn't always have to be complicated. It doesn't always have to be the most expensive, fastest gadget. And by complete coincidence, the solution that we chose, New Jersey and New York were using as well. And again, that was launched only in October. It seems like longer ago now. And what I'm really proud of there is we do get sometimes in government and in the private sector, people worry, are the people of Jersey ready for technology? but we seem to have broken world records for the take-up of a COVID app. We've got over 50,000 downloads for a population of just over 100,000. The record around the world seemed to have been Iceland with about 38% of the population. So it shows you people will adapt to technology. People will embrace it if you market it in the right way, if you educate people, if you communicate to people about the benefits, people will use it. So I'm really proud of again, how Jersey responded using technology.
And I think it's also a really good example of where people have very legitimate concerns about data, use of data, and data privacy, because it's an issue of our time. We've seen it previously with medical health records, and actually a shift to digital health during the pandemic, I think, has helped demonstrate these things can work effectively. But again, some of those early trials we saw in the UK, I know they trialled in the Isle of Wight, and then suddenly Matt Hancock went very quiet about the app, so you just knew this is not going to plan. You came up with a solution that was also able to reassure people, and the take-up is evidence of that.
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky. We could buy an off-the-shelf solution, which had already been a success, but we intentionally went for something that was simple. We didn't look at it as a technology project. We said, actually, there's no point having something that's all singing or dancing if people are scared of it, if people are worried about it. So we went with something where we could say, this is not going to capture your data. It won't know where you are. It's called a COVID alert app. It's not a tracing app. It's not tracking where you are. And actually, I think that message went down really well. And people, we didn't see those concerns about it. We were able to educate people. And I think people at that time trusted the message they were getting around it. So they weren't worried, and they've taken it up and they've used it.
Listen, we've got so many things to talk about, so I want to not quite rattle through, but I'll say rattle through a few key headlines. One of which, for me, I loved, because I love learning about new stuff, was Jersey Tech Week. There was a risk that you would not be able to stage Jersey Tech Week because of the circumstances we found ourselves in. Yet, it felt to me you came up with a brand new format that I'm actually now seeing lots of other organisations copy.
Yeah, this is it. We wanted to carry on doing it. We'd already seen that people were used to a virtual environment. But like a lot of these things, and digital's very good at that, you take something which is a problem and you turn it on its head. And what we found with Tech Week is that whereas normally we'd have to persuade people to travel to Jersey, risk fog at the airport, we always look in the night before they arrive on Flight Radar. But actually we were able to get some amazing speakers because they were sitting at home. And we were just asking them to give up half an hour of their time to join us. And I think what Tech Week really showed is not only that we could connect with these people in here, it showed you that, again, another industry in terms of the events industry, all the people we see around us. I went to a great Jersey Finance annual review a couple of weeks ago, which again, Jersey's carried on. It's not just that we've carried on working from home, we've carried on running those events, we've carried on communicating. We worked with government earlier this year about, we were supposed to have a visit from the UAE ambassador, and we said, well, we can't do that, but let's have a virtual event. Let's have teams from both sides working together, and we could still do it. So in the face of adversity, we realized that actually you can have a degree of normality. And as Dave Burt said on that video, I think we'll learn lessons from that, and we'll carry on doing some of that. I'd love to have an audience here watching us, but actually maybe in the future we can have some speakers join us virtually in a way that we might be a bit worried about in the past, but now we won't, because we trust the technology.
You've tempted fate when we link up with someone very shortly. I'm sure it will all go an absolute dream. Talking of meeting virtually, linking up with UK political parties, particularly the party of government, is an important thing to do. Yeah. And you were involved in that process as well, because that sort of stakeholder liaison, flying the flag for Jersey, it's often about reputation around finance industry, but actually this time around, it was also able to show off about what we were able to do digitally.
Yeah, it was great that towards the end of the year we were able to go back to those international connections. People would have seen a quick photograph there. The US ambassador spent a morning at the hub and was able to learn all about what we were doing here, technology, and I think he was genuinely really quite surprised. It wasn't what he expected to see in Jersey. But as you said, we were able to talk to the Conservative Party conference virtually. We had Ivan Muscat here in the Digital Jersey Hub, join me, Senator Ian Gorst, and we had MPs, the MP for Gatwick, the head of the UK Airports Association, and we were talking about how Jersey had used technology to get flying back again safely. to test at the border. And it's interesting that, if you remember, there were press stories about the UK companies behind testing saying, we've been talking to Jersey. If they can do it in Jersey, why can't we do it here? And it took them a lot longer to do it. So again, we've shown we can use our size, we can use our scale to be nimble and agile.
I want to wrap up our look back on 2020 now before we start looking forward by asking something about you. And that is not how dashing and handsome you are at all times, Tony Moretta. It is, in amongst the madness of the past 12 months, when there have been moments where you've been forced to just sit down, whether that's at home or on your own in your office because you can't have everyone coming in and out, have you also used that moment to draw breath, to reflect, to think a little bit more? Are there some upsides to the leader of an organisation having a bit of thinking time, or has that not happened?
No, definitely. And I remember at the beginning of this, Joe Moynihan from Jersey Finance saying the business development team were not had more time to follow up on their pipeline because they went on a plane. And funnily enough, the people they were chasing, they went on a plane either, so they were able to get in touch with them. And I've spoken to other heads of organisation who've had a similar view. We've been able to sit back as an island, as organisations, and think, actually, what does this change? What are their priorities? We were able to have time to come up with our 5-year plan. We saw things like the Economic Council and the group of the great and the good getting together and thinking, actually, what is really important to the future of Jersey? This isn't just about, this is stuff we were going to have to do anyway, but actually maybe COVID has forced us to address what is perhaps a bit of understandable complacency sometimes we have as an island that's been very successful and has a good standard of life, and use that time profitably. And I'm really pleased that I think for the first time we've been able to think, okay, we've built the foundations, what's our long-term plan?
It's almost like we'd planned this. You're teeing up the next thing I was about to say. We've spoken a lot about 2020, and if you've just joined us, welcome to the Digital Jersey Annual Review. We're going to look ahead now, not just to 2021, because today is the day Digital Jersey launches its 5-year strategy consultation. It's 4 themes: business, I've written it down, infrastructure, people, and government, and that Venn diagram overlaps when you see the document to see this strategy at the heart of island life. And I would say, having read it myself last night and this morning, Tony, first of all, it surprised me how much detail is in there for a 5-year plan, so fair play for that, because I see some very vague strategies in this world. But in addition to that, it's not really a Digital Jersey strategy, it's a strategy for a digital Jersey.
It really is, because we've seen again over the last year, technology and digital is not just a standalone sector. It's at the heart of everything going forward. And that is a lesson Jersey really needs to learn, is that if we don't adopt technology across all of our industries, not just digital, finance, hospitality, agriculture, we've seen some great things, and we'll see some stuff at Tech Awards this evening about that, then we will get left behind. So digital is something the whole island has to think about, and hopefully people will embrace this strategy as an island-wide strategy.
Just put a little bit of meat on the bones for me of what it's actually trying to achieve. If I sit down with you in 5 years from now and go, ha, Tony, you promised this and you didn't manage it, I've got you, typical journalist. What do you hope Jersey will look like in 5 years from now?
I think we will have more sort of new economy type businesses. But I think also you will see in existing businesses a more skilled workforce. You will start to see, we did a great review with an organisation with a slightly odd name of Geek Talent. And it's probably the most detailed review anyone's done of the workforce here and the skills requirements from industry now and in the future. And you start to look at the digital density of jobs. And what you see, and this is common sense, isn't it, really, to all of us, that more of every job is involving technology than it used to. But we're still some way behind a lot of other countries. So what I want to see is more of those digital businesses, but I want to see existing and traditional businesses, many of which we still want to protect, and we want to have that diversity here in Jersey. But if they're better users of technology, then they're more productive, they're more successful, they give people who work there a better reward, a better lifestyle. And so I want to see Jersey using technology, as you say, in the private sector, in all industries, in government as well. A digital government that uses a digital twin to plan the next big infrastructure project. So we make decisions based on data and evidence and not opinion and anecdotal evidence. And I think we're getting there, but there's a long way to go.
After this annual review, people can go online to digital.je/plans.
Yeah.
They can see this 5-year strategy document. It sounds like a daft question. Why are you opening it to consultation? What are you actually wanting to hear from people?
We don't have all the answers. We have consulted fairly widely with our members, with our board, our enhanced board, as we've seen already on the video. We've talked to government about this and others, but we don't know everything. And we want people to engage. We're going to publish it today, as you've said. We want people to come back and say, actually, what have you missed? Where have you maybe got something not quite right? Where would we like to see a bit more detail? And also people coming back and say, actually, we want to be involved in that bit. You know, we think we can play a role. There's lots of things we plan which are about collaboration. Going back to the theme of 2020, we can't do this by ourselves. You look at that plan, there are a lot of areas that we will deliver, but there's also a lot of areas that we will drive and support, but we won't be delivering ourselves. We need other people to sort of take up the challenge and deliver that themselves.
Okay, Tony, thank you for now. You can see all the details of that at digital.je/plans. And before you do, here's just a little taster of that 5-year strategy. So that is the 5-year strategy. As I say, you can get yourself to digital.je/plans to find out more, but not yet, because I want to introduce some friends to our annual review. Tony's still with us, but Ali Cambray from PwC is here. Ali, good morning to you. Good morning. And Professor Alan Brown from the University of Exeter Business School. Is he there? There he is, looking like our captain in his cockpit. Good morning to you, Alan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Great to see you both. Now, I've written down your job title so that I do not misrepresent you. Alan, you are the Professor of Digital Economy. The obvious first question is, what the heck is that?
It's a grand title, which I'm happy to have. So there's a lot going on, as you've talked about today in the digital economy, how the world is becoming more digital, and the impact of digital technologies on our lives, on society, on business. And my interest is trying to understand those changes, how technology is driving business and society, and the implications for our world as we move towards a digital society. And that's how I spend my time, trying to understand that, looking at how organizations are changing, building educational materials so I can help others to understand what I'm seeing and what others are applying, and trying to improve the effect in businesses, governments, and society.
Alan, are there common areas amongst these organisations and governments and jurisdictions of what it is they are doing? And likewise, are there common areas where they're also getting it spectacularly wrong?
Yes, I think we've seen over the years, as individuals and as organisations, that digital technologies are changing what we do. We are digitising. So we're moving to these sorts of ways of communicating, for example. How we write things down is no longer necessarily on paper. How we share documents, how we communicate with each other, how we interact and spend money online as opposed to in the store. How many people are using physical money even today. So we're seeing the digitization being common and the effect of that on individuals and society. What we're struggling with, I think, is the implications of changing to transform what we do as a result of those digitizations. Not just doing what we did before in a digital way, but rethinking what we need to do in a digital world, which was why I really enjoyed the conversation this morning where you said it's not so much about digital Jersey, it's about Jersey and how Jersey will be effective in a digital world. And I think that's the transformation people are trying to work through, and I think struggling a little bit with, because the implications are vast, as we've discussed.
The implications are vast, which is why we also need some super brains in this world. I include yourself, and Ali, I include you in this as well, because you work at PwC, but you're also working with governments really thinking about the future of this island's economy. Just set out what you actually do.
Yeah, sure, Gary. So good morning, everybody. I'm based in the advisory team in PwC, and we have been working for about 6 months so far with government on helping them to think through something called their Future Economy Programme. So we have been thinking through really pulling together all the evidence about what's going on so far, really understanding the economy, and thinking about how we can move during the course of this year towards something called a Future Economic Framework for the island.
Sounds so easy. I'm sure you've just set aside half an hour to do this. How do you actually go about that? Do you start at the end of where you want to be and then work back to fill in the blanks, or do you start at the start and go, what don't we know? It's those known unknowns, as I think it was Donald Rumsfeld who once said.
No, it's a bit of both. I mean, what we've been doing, I think, and it's just really interesting, I think, reflecting on the conversation that we've had so far this morning, is that what we've been doing is thinking about context of global megatrends, and there are many of those, but the two key ones are the fourth industrial revolution, the technology we've been talking about, and the ecological and climate crisis, the sustainability imperative. And when you put that in a pot, the urgency of those, together with the structural challenges we have on the island, so obviously land and all the challenges around that, and ageing population, etc. And then when you also think about where we are as an economy, and what's happened this year in terms of what's happened with the pandemic, and you also think about the opportunities for the island, we've been talking a lot about those, innovating and building on our strengths, then I think what's really interesting we've been thinking about is that means that we're absolutely clear that we are living through a really big transition at the moment, and that Jersey's economy will be completely different, I think, and look and feel completely different in 5-10 years' time. And as we've been saying, I think our jobs, our roles, and the way in which we do those roles and how we work together as an economy is going to look really different. And so in the context of the work that we've been doing, we have been thinking about, well, what does that mean for the future objectives of Jersey's economy, and how do we pull that all together, and how do we think about the synergies and the trade-offs between those and land in terms of a journey on the way forward? And happy to talk a bit more about that in a minute if you like.
And do you think Jersey is up for the fight? Because I suspect it's a concept our heads can't quite see yet. You know, we talk about automation and digitisation and so on and so forth to improve productivity, new sectors, upskilling, reskilling, yada, yada, yada. can we do it? I think is all I'm trying to ask. And then will we do it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely we will. I think there's so much that we have to build on here in terms of our core strengths. And I think what's really interesting is that, so we pulled out in our work 5 key things that we think we have to get right in terms of can we do it, right? One is really improving business productivity and resilience. Resilience is really key, we've learned this year. And a lot of the work that Tony has been talking about in terms of what the 5-year strategy is going to do around technology and infrastructure is going to be really important for that. So that's the first one. The second one, of course, is then around households and individuals and making sure that they share in that growth. And I think this point about digital density is really important there because, yes, this is about entrepreneurs and innovation, but it's also about everyone and making sure no one is left behind. The third area we were thinking about is then around our island identity and the importance of our reputation and how to build on that. And again, these new areas that we're really looking to push into, fintech, sustainable finance, which I'm heavily involved in, are really key there. Fourthly, we've then got the importance of upskilling, and we've talked a lot around that, absolutely critical. I mean, our latest PwC work, I think that came out last week for Davos, is suggesting that pretty much half of the global workforce is now going to need reskilling by 2025. So we can't go fast enough on that, but there's a lot of opportunity there. And then last but by no means least is around our how the economy better lives within environmental limits. And I don't think that could be any more relevant given the Jersey climate conversation that's been launched this week. So lots in there, I think, Gary.
I love a 5-point answer because I'm not allowed to interrupt you because everyone will be wondering what the other points are. From Ali to Alan, and Tony, I will let you get a word in a moment, I promise you. But I just want to set the scene here. Alan, at the University of Exeter, you've just got some funding for something called Digit Lab. What is Digit Lab and what is its relationship with Jersey?
Well, I think what Ali expressed is the urgency for us to look forward and the massive changes that will occur. So one of the things that we've been doing is we've been putting together some groups of people that are focused on this challenge, and Jersey is right in the heart of that. Jersey, with Tony's work and James Linder and the rest of the team, they've been looking at the digital strategy for Jersey and what that will mean over the next few years. And we have a fairly large government grant that we'll be kicking off in the next few months, supported by Digital Jersey, and with the help of the folks in Digital Jersey, we'll be looking at what those changes will mean. We'll be looking at some of the barriers. We'll be trying to look objectively at what that will mean for what Ali described as the need for everybody to participate in this uplift from an educational point of view, from an environmental point of view, from an employment point of view. So we'll be trying to look at those issues and to provide some help and support with the Digital Jersey input.
Tony, it strikes me that there's a lot happening that perhaps people don't realise is happening day to day. Are you, I was going to say the circus ringmaster, that's probably the wrong analogy. I will go with the orchestra conductor. Is your role really to pull those threads together, to be that liaison between government and industry? Where do you fit into this process?
One of the things I've always loved about the way Digital Jersey was set up, and this was done a few years before I got here, is we were set up at the interface between the public and the private sector. We were set up as arm's length, so we get the benefits of being part of government in terms of access, in terms of funding and things like that, but we get to work very closely with other organisations on and off island. And I think having Alan here, Exeter's been a bit of a theme. Other universities are available, I should say, especially if Dame Wendy is watching from Southampton. But yes, we really, as Digital Jersey, we're still a relatively small team. We can't do everything ourselves. Back to what we said about the 5-year plan, that is incumbent on lots of other organisations. It's great, for example, that government has brought in a future economy partner in PwC who is looking at all of our different economic sectors, from retail, agriculture, work closely together. It's great that government have backed us for having the Digital Jersey Academy. You know, it's been great. We didn't have a chance to talk about it earlier on, but one of the other things that happened last year is we established in the Academy a full and part-time degree equivalent program, which is now on the Ofqual register at level 6. So that is the equivalent of a degree. That is a degree level qualification people get. And what's been really interesting, that's in digital leadership. That's a whole range of things. And when you talk to those students and say, where do you want to work when you graduate, most of them want to set up their own business, which is great because actually that fits in. Jersey's actually quite an entrepreneurial culture, and it's one of the things that came out of the Economic Council. How do we encourage people to be entrepreneurs? And actually, if they're setting up new businesses, they're not going to focus on the old businesses. They're going to focus, as Alan said, what are the new opportunities that are coming out of technology? So I think as Digital Jersey, we can act as hopefully the glue between different activities. We can make people think, maybe be a bit controversial and push people as we do every now and again. I know you don't do that yourself, Gary. Connect with overseas organisations. We have a lot of discussion in Jersey about we need homegrown talent, and yes, we absolutely do. But we are a small place, and we do not have all of the answers. And something I think is an opportunity we don't take enough advantage of. Actually, I think one of the silver linings of Brexit is we are doing this. We are looking around the world. We are building relationships around. We can pick and choose which are the best approaches in every area of the world. If it's the US, it's the UK, it's Scandinavia or whatever. And if we can maybe, a bit like the Economic Council did at the end, raise people's eyes to the horizon a bit, to see what's coming, to see what we have to be ready for, and make sure as Jersey PLC we're ready for it.
I was really struck when I read the Government of Jersey Economic Council report, and if people haven't read it, it's really worthwhile reading because some of these things can be dull as ditch water. This is a really accessible, useful, practical report. But it struck me how many of the themes and the roads lead to digital. It's not that everything has to be part of the digital industry, it's that every industry really has to be digital. Time, unfortunately, is against us. We could talk for hours on this stuff. I want to really take away a Jerry Springer-style final thought from Ali and Alan, if that's okay. Ali, if there's one message that people watching this take away from the work you're doing, and indeed if there's anyone in government who you just need to give a gentle nudge to, let's just do it live on the telly right now. What's that message you want us to take away today, Ali?
Well, I think just a really helpful one, a positive one, I think, is so at PwC we're also going through our own big digital transformation. I mean, globally, I think they're investing about $3 billion in upskilling all of us, and even I'm doing my Alteryx training next week. But our senior partner here in the Channel Islands is really ambitious for us about this, and he always uses this hashtag. Don't get left behind, and I think that's a really helpful hashtag for us as an island, as a community, and I think that's the message that I would leave everybody with.
I like that, and that's one heck of a training budget. I'm very impressed. Ali, thank you so much. Professor, I'll call you this time around, Alan, on the assumption that is not quite the budget we're playing with day to day in the island. What's the rallying call you can make, or indeed, what's the big danger you want us to be aware of? A final key message and thought, please, Alan.
Yes, I think it's very important that we recognise that everybody needs to be uplifted by what's going on with this digital transformation. So I would do two things. First of all, encourage individuals not to be afraid of these technology changes. It's very easy to feel these things are being done to you, but you need to participate in this change. You need to be part of what we see as the digital transformation, and to look at it as a positive thing for you, for your lives, and for what's going on the island of Jersey. And the challenge, I think, for all of us is to maintain that view on the importance of everybody participating in this digital change. It will have major impact, and like all major impacts, there will be some people that will be disadvantaged, and we need to keep our eyes on that and ensure that's as few as possible, and we encourage and support everybody.
Wise words, thoughtful words, and salient words as well. Professor Alan Brown, Professor of Digital Economy, still sounds so important. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Ali Cambray from PwC, also very important. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Tony, stick around if you will, because it's time for us to look ahead specifically to the next 12 months.
People don't want to be giving away data or even sharing data in any form if they can't see how it's used and how it's going to make life better for all of us together collectively. But this is where the digital twins come in. They allow us to show all of these things.
This year, Digital Jersey is excited to launch the Academy Online. It is split into two parts: digital literacy to find out more about the technology around you, and digital upskilling and retraining to help Jersey's economy.
We're also really working on aligning the various government agencies, ourselves included, around that common goal of making Jersey a real best-in-class destination for world-class fintech.
So 2021 is here. I was going to say, he's almost got it easy. We're talking about 2021 in February, so there's only 10 and a half, 11 months to commit to. But the plan is already underway. The plan is out there. What are you actually wanting to achieve this year specifically then, Tony?
The danger in some ways of publishing a 5-year plan is you've got to say, actually in the first year, you've got to make progress against that. So what people will see if they go to our website today, and not only will they see the 5-year strategic plan, they'll see our operational plan for 2021, one of the things we want to get done this year. And what I'm particularly looking forward to are carrying on working with our members to help them grow. And we're going to be going back to some work we did about 5 years ago to say which are the sectors that can do really well here, what are the clusters of activity we can do, because the world has changed a bit, obviously, over 5 years. We want to see how we can help with funding of organisations. We're going to be launching imminently a funding platform. We know, sadly, thanks to the Jersey Innovation Fund closing down, it's been harder for companies to get access to funding. We're setting up a platform to link companies with investors, and that's going to come out. We're also looking at things like new opportunities around things like data, looking at fintech. We announced yesterday that we've already changed, been nimble and agile. You know, we had a head of fintech last year in Jason Laity. He got a promotion, if you can call it that, to be chairman of Jersey Finance, as we saw on there. But actually, in an age where people aren't traveling as much, where getting the message across is about people doing online conferences and speeches, we formally appointed Dave Birch as our fintech ambassador. You know, we've set up things like the Jersey Research Foundation, which we mentioned that we were planning on doing this at the annual review last year. We're still about to launch that properly. But again, that is looking at how we fund research and development in Jersey, because that's something we don't have. And you saw Deputy Guida bring something forward successfully to the State Assembly about putting 20% of lottery funding into scientific research, digital health, green research. So there are lots of things like that we're doing, lots of new opportunities, carrying on with the academy, carrying on the focus of education, working with government. And obviously one of the first things to do is really, as we said, get that feedback on the 5-year plan and really get going on it. We've said earlier on, we shouldn't just develop strategic plans. You said yourself we've got some detail in there. There's a reason for that, because we want to get going straight away.
And I think that really does come through when you read those documents. You touched on the funding issue there, and that is really interesting, because it is something I do hear. You know, people can have all the greatest ideas in the world and all that entrepreneurial spirit and all those soft skills we talk about, those innate skills in that person. But if they can't fund their project, so you are working on something at a private industry level, but I know that there's also the government fiscal stimulus fund to work on other projects as well?
Yeah, so we are bidding for a number of projects for ourselves, but also for our members who've gone through us, the fiscal stimulus fund. Government are also looking at longer term economic recovery support as well. We're in a really lucky position, and I'm very grateful to government that they always had a plan in the current government plan to increase our funding every year. They've stuck to that, so we are going into this year with more funding than we've had before, and we want to spend that as wisely as possible. But we do need to find a way of linking up. We do have investors here. We have startups being announced. I mean, there are a couple of new startups about to be announced next week that I don't want to spoil their thunder. But there are entrepreneurs here, and there are high net worths here. There are people who invest in technology businesses around the world, and what we're starting to see is they're investing in homegrown startups. And if we can do anything to advance that, then great.
And the more startups we have and the more success we have, the more we need a suitably skilled workforce, whether that's through the current cohort of students in education or indeed old-timers like me upskilling and reskilling as well. And it's been really interesting to see the growth and the development of the Digital Jersey Academy through this, the Digital Leadership Programme, and the breadth of interest in that and the opportunities that lie ahead.
So we had this year the second cohort come in for the Digital Leadership Programme. Obviously, when you're starting up a new educational establishment, you have to give it time for the years to fill up, so to speak. We recruited another 30 people onto the full and part-time courses. And what we're going to see this year that I'm really looking forward to is our first graduation from the academy. But we're also starting to see shorter courses. We're seeing data science courses and things like that. We've got a Digital Jersey Academy online platform because people are used to doing it more. We're looking this year in our plans at what we call a technology pact. So you heard Ali talking about PwC investing in retraining. We hear all this focus on the 4-day week. So wouldn't it be great, especially when people have got more flexible working, remote working, if companies thought, well, let's focus on a 4-day week for people, but let's invest. We're still going to pay people that 5th day, but let's invest in their future and our future. And so we are going to be working, especially hopefully emerging from the pandemic, working with companies, say, what's the pact you are going to make, not just with us, but with your employees, that you will invest in their future. Retraining is going to be huge. This is not just about bright young kids. This is about retraining a workforce that's got used to maybe in some areas focusing on admin tasks. They're going to be automated. So we have to protect their futures, protect the company's futures, and protect the future of our economy as well.
And you can go online to digital.je/plans to find all the details for the year ahead, for that 5-year strategy that is now open to consultation as well. I just wish we could do the whole day of this, but the time is up for you and I this morning, Tony. I just want to end really with your own rallying cry, very similar to what I was saying to Professor Allen and to Ali as well. Let's just end with an injection, a jab of optimism at the start of 2021 after what has been a torrid 2020 for many people in their personal lives. What can we do this year?
I was really lucky, as I said at the beginning, to get to spend a week in Silicon Valley at the beginning of the year, and that piqued my intellectual curiosity. That, oddly enough, with the year that was to follow, really made me optimistic about the future. Technology is going to change our life, not just in the scary ways, but some amazing ways. You look at COVID, the speed of the vaccine. And I realized, having met some people in Silicon Valley, that we were understanding the building blocks of life and biology. This isn't just about, iPhones and things like that. So I would say to people, get your intellectual curiosity going and get involved. Get involved within your company. Get involved with Digital Jersey. I'm really pleased, just in the last week, at the beginning of the year, we've got a lot more companies joining as enterprise members of Digital Jersey. They want to get involved in what we're doing. We're seeing stuff coming out of government, as Ali said, about the new economy. And this is not just about a complete transfer of everything to a new economy. This is about how every industry in Jersey can become part of that new economy, even our traditional ones like agriculture. So it's get out there, start to look around at all the things that are happening around you, look at opportunities in your industry, in your company, look at our 5-year plan, come back and tell us how you can help, how you can get involved.
Tony, thank you so much for this morning. Thank you to our other guests as well. And thank you to you, wherever you are and whatever you're wearing, for joining us for this Digital Jersey virtual annual review. We can get too optimistic, we can get wildly optimistic, we can get naively optimistic, but I hope this morning as well, there's also been a fair few shots of realism as well, of what those challenges ahead might be, but also a reminder, my word, if anywhere can do it, we can do it. Thank you for watching. Are the stars of Jersey's digital industries. Tonight, we get to find out because it's the Jersey Tech Awards. This evening, 6 o'clock. Come and join me. You'll have a great time. All the details, digital.je.